Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Upgrades. I'm Jeremy Knoll.
And I'm John Suarez.
And this is Malcolm. And in this episode, we're going to talk about the Sneak Attack deck, headed up by Anowon the Ruin Sage as the commander from the new Zendikar Rising expansion. And this is one of two commander decks that actually came out along with Zendikar Rising. And this one is a black-blue, very focused on rogues as a creature type, but also has kind of a mill sub-theme mixed in with a reanimator sub-theme. It definitely wants to reanimate things, and pretty much whatever the best thing in your opponent's graveyard is really what it's aiming for here.
Yeah. That's what Rogues and Zendikar Rising are about. They're about milling cards since they keyworded it, and now they just want to get it there. So.
They just want to put it on as many new cards as they can.
That's right.
So,
yeah.
Anowon the Ruin Thief is a vampire rogue for 2 blue-black. It's a 2/4. Other rogues you control get +1/+1, so it's already a rogue lord. And whenever one or more rogues you control deal combat damage to a player, that player mills a card for each 1 damage dealt to them. If a player mills at least 1 creature card this way, you draw a card. So any 1 creature, you just draw the 1 card. It's not per creature that goes in, but still a good way to draw a couple extra cards throughout the game.
Yeah. And it'll mill quite a bit.
Yeah, it definitely can, especially because a lot of the rogues, especially in this precon, and we've talked a little bit about this during the Land's Wrath episode as well, but these precons are very solid. Like, very solid as far as just having basically only kind of 1.5 themes, 1.75 maybe themes to really go after, whereas the old commander decks, like with their previous commander decks, not old necessarily, but like the Commander 2020 precons and stuff, all had 3 different commanders that really kind of pulled you in different themes. This one really focuses on being rogue tribal and reanimating a little bit along with that. So, and both of those are themes that actually show up in Zendikar Rising with the rogues. So yeah, the deck is very solid, has a lot of really good cards and a really good value. So it was a little bit difficult to try and find cards to cut, but I think there are definitely some new cards that we want to put in here to really help out the deck a little bit more with the themes that are already there. So why don't you kick it off? I know that this was a really good card that I was really thinking about doing, but
sure. But I'm actually surprised it wasn't actually in the precon. I guess they wanted to have some of it in the regular set. But so the first card I chose is one of the main rogues in Zendikar Rising is Zareth San, the Trickster. So this is a 3 colors, blue-black, 4/4 with flash. It has an ability very, very, very close to Rogue Ninjutsu. With 2 colors, blue-black, return an unblocked attacking rogue you control to its owner's hand, and then you put Zareth into play, tapped and attacking. And then when it deals combat damage to a player, you may return target permanent card from that player's graveyard to the battlefield under your control. Permanent card, not creature. Like we talked about, it has like the reanimation theme of taking your opponent's creatures from the graveyard. This card will take anything, any permanent. That is very, very powerful in Commander. There are a lot of powerful cards that people play, and I love ninjutsu. I have a Yuriko deck, so I'm glad that this card didn't have Rogue Ninjutsu, because it would get obnoxious if you were able to just ninjutsu this from the command zone over and over again. But this is still a very powerful card. I think a key card you want in this deck for sure.
Yeah, it's very, very good. Just being able to get something ridiculous like even just like a Rhystic Study, Smothering Tithe, something from their graveyard after you've milled them a couple of cards, just be super, super solid in this deck. So
yeah, you gotta dream big, Jeremy. There's huge things you can get.
There are, and if you can get one of the really big things, you just get like an Omniscience or something ridiculous like that, you're gonna just have a real good time. Your opponents are not gonna have a real good time. So my first card is another card from the new set. And that is the Thieving Skydiver. Probably not quite as exciting as Zarathan in this deck specifically, but I think this is going to be a really, really solid card in Commander. I'm very interested to see it actually be played. So it's a 1 and a blue, 2/1 Merfolk Rogue, which is definitely one of the reasons why I put it. It has flying, and it has kicker X, where X can't be 0. So you do have to pay the kicker cost if you want to kick it. And it enters the battlefield. If it was kicked, Gain control of target artifact with converted mana cost X or less. If that artifact is an equipment, attach it to Thieving Skydiver. They have to add in the little addendum, the reminder, X can't be 0, or put the addendum X can't be 0, so that you're not stealing somebody's mana crypt or something like that by paying 1 and a blue. So
yeah,
you do have
still pretty good.
Still pretty good for 3 mana, a 2/1 flyer that steals a mana crypt or something.
That was actually one of the cards I chose as well. So that card's it's real good. Stealing someone's Soul Ring, mana crypt, or late game stealing, a bigger card. Who knows what it could be?
Yeah,
and
you steal somebody's
artifacts.
It just doesn't even matter what like Panharmonicon, something like that. A little bit later. It's going to be very, very solid. It's. I think this is a very solid one. 3 mana, be able to steal somebody else's Soul Ring that they played on turn 1.
Steal someone's sword, and now their swords equipped to it.
Yeah, all like the equipments are super solid ones as well.
Yeah.
Obviously that one's going to be real, real good. So, what is your next card that you got going on?
So, my next card is from Core Set 21, where they kind of like seed cards to tell you what's coming in future sets. And I chose Ghostly Pilfer, colorless and a blue, 2/1 Spirit Rogue. And it says whenever it becomes untapped, you may pay 2, and if you do, draw a card. So it has like that, key to the city clause where if it untaps, you can draw the card. And it says whenever an opponent casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, draw a card. Obviously, in Commander, almost everyone is casting cards from somewhere other than their hand, most of the command zone. So this card should almost always draw you a card, which is nice. And then it also just has the ability to discard a card, and it can't be blocked this turn. And, we talked about this deck having somewhat of a reanimation kind of theme. So if you have one of your more expensive cards like the Primordial that's in this deck, or Consuming Aberration, or something like that, or Scourge of Fleets, being able to discard it to make your Pilfer unblockable and then reanimate it seems real sweet. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, this was one that was pretty close on my list as well. Just because of the can't be blocked, and if I was going to go with Zaristan, just having more creatures that have the ability to be unblockable is really, like, there are already a few in the deck, but yeah, adding more in always really, really solid.
Yeah, I have another one in my deck somewhere, or my selection somewhere, so you're going to see the unblockable theme there.
Yeah, for sure. My next one is another one from Zendikar Rising, which is Nighthawk Scavenger. And this one is the one that everybody kind of looked at and went, oh, okay, it's an upgraded Vampire Nighthawk, sort of thing. So it is a 1 black Vampire Rogue. It is 1+star/3. It's a flying death touch with lifelink, and its power is equal to 1 plus the number of card types amongst cards in your opponent's graveyards. So it does give you that 1 power to start off with instead of just being a *3, an X3 or whatever. So that's kind of nice, and it can deal the damage, with the death touch to block and kill something. But yeah, it's just a very solid card. The flying death touch lifelink is just is good. Being able to get bigger is great. And since you're already milling, it kind of goes over Vampire Nighthawk in that sense. Otherwise, I think Vampire Nighthawk is also just an extremely solid card for a deck like this, but this one takes the edge just because of the extra milling sub theme that the deck's got going on. So
yeah, milling, and it's a rogue. Yeah, it's definitely an upgrade for sure.
Yeah.
I'm gonna jump down the list. I was just talking about some unblockable cards, and I chose a small little 1/1 creature for 2 mana in Looter Ilkor from Time Spiral.
So I also have this in my deck. In my
colorless and a blue 1/1. Shadow, so basically unblockable. It can only be blocked or block creatures with Shadow, and then whenever it deals damage to an opponent, draw a card and discard a card. Perfect little rogue to fit the theme of what the deck's trying to do with its kind of unblockable creatures. It enables Prowl very easily, obviously, since the creature is going to be unblocked almost certainly. There are very, very few Shadow creatures in the world of Commander, so... and if not, this guy just a minor draw engine for when you're attacking. I like this guy a lot. I've played this card in tons of decks, and I think it's a really, really good fit here.
Yeah, I think the pseudo unblockable with Shadow is very solid. Like you said, there's just going to be like almost nobody's going to play anything with Shadow. Nobody's going to be playing like your Dwathi horrors very often and stuff like that.
Yep.
So it's very, very good. Probably not going to be unblockable, or probably not going to be blocked at all ever. And the looting ability added onto it is just solid, and it being a rogue is definitely like
Yeah, it checks all the boxes you want for this kind of a deck. It's unblockable, it's a rogue, it draws you cards, discards cards. Does it all.
Yep. The next one that I have is one that I believe that we both have as well, which is one that normally would be a pretty solid one, but with it being a rogue, definitely takes it over the top. And this is a Keeper of Keys. This is from one of the conspiracy sets. I believe this is from Conspiracy 2. It's a 3 blue, 4/4 human rogue mutant. When it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. So it's got the monarch ability built into it. You're going to be attacking a lot and hopefully being able to deal the damage. So you being able to get that monarch back should be pretty easy. Not going to say that people aren't going to be able to take it away from you, because I don't know how much blocking you're going to be doing in this deck. But being able to just get that back almost every turn, very, very good. And it says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you're the monarch, creatures you control can't be blocked this turn. So if you happen to be able to keep everybody at bay and be able to keep that monarch for an entire round, then that just makes all your creatures unblockable. Super, super solid. Very good in this deck.
Big fan of that card. Like I said, like you said, I chose it as well. Just randomly has that rogue creature type stuck in there in the middle of human mutant. So
human mutant, sure,
fits
why not?
perfectly. Fits perfectly. So we're talking about this unblockable theme of the deck. The next card that I chose it's a pricey one. This is the most expensive card I've opted to choose to put into these decks. And it's KnowledgeExploitation. So 5 colorless, blue, tribal sorcery rogue. So the rogue sorcery.
Love it.
It has Prowl for 3 colorless and a blue. So when you inevitably deal combat damage to a player with a rogue, you're going to be able to cast this for much cheaper. And it says search target opponent's library for an instant or sorcery, and you can cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then shuffle their library. So you just go through their deck, take their best instant or sorcery, which almost every deck has something obnoxious that you would want to take for 4 mana. This card's only been printed once. It's only been printed in Morning Tide, I believe. So that's probably where its price tag comes from. Makes a lot of sense. But this is a rogue deck, and if you're looking for somewhere to put your budget on your upgrade, I think that's definitely worth the money for it, because that's a very, very powerful effect.
For sure, this was definitely late consideration cut for me as well. I think it's an extremely, extremely solid card. I love it a lot. So in a similar vein, my next one is actually also a rogue that is not a creature. And it's from Morningtide as well, because that was the expansion that had a bunch of these extra creature types attached to non-creature permanents and spells and whatever. And that's Cloak and Dagger, which is an equipment. It's a 2-mana equipment, tribal artifact, rogue equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has Shroud. And whenever a rogue creature comes into play, you may attach Cloak and Dagger to it. So it basically is 2 mana. You play a rogue, and it just comes right into it, and then it can't be targeted. Really great if you're, trying to put it on one of your really big creatures. If you're trying to put it on like your Ogre Slumlord or something like that, that's a rogue. If you want to put it onto something like Sig River Cutthroat, just to be able to make sure that they lose the life every turn, and of course being able to put it on your commander, so that it just has Shroud, and you don't have to move to equip. It's still got the trigger on there, but you don't have to lightning greaves it up. It just automatically does it as long as you've got Cloak and Dagger already on the battlefield. So
very sweet card. I like equipments with creature types. It's great. So the next card I chose is actually, there's a card very similar in the deck, which is one I actually just chose to cut in. What is that card? Military Intelligence, I believe it's called. But the card I was going to replace that with is Reconnaissance Mission. So initially, this is 2 blue. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. This card's been printed a million different ways in Bite Enough Thassa, in Coastal Piracy, now Reconnaissance Mission. This card has cycling for 2 mana, which is pretty good. If you don't happen to need it at the time, just get it out. I originally had Biden Thassa in this role, but Biden Thassa costs more money. Biden Thassa isn't as good if you don't have the creatures out and you just want to get another card quickly, which is nice with this. And it's a real cheap effect. It's just a strictly better Coastal Piracy, which really hurts me because I love Coastal Piracy, specifically from Mercadian Mask as an uncommon. But I mean, it's just a solid card. You know, all your little rogues are going to be unblockable, so you're just going to be drawing a bunch of cards.
Yeah, but we also all know how much you love cycling. So
I do love cycling. That is my favorite mechanic. So
having that stapled onto another effect like this is just butter right on top.
Yep,
so
for sure.
My next one is another one that is a Lord, sort of. So it is good because it's a Lord for whatever creature type you happen to want. And for this deck, obviously Rogue is going to be the one you want, but that's Adaptive Automaton. It's a 3-mana 2/2 artifact creature construct. As it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type, and it is that type in addition to its other types, and other creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1. So not only does it make your Anowon a little bit bigger, your Anowon makes it a little bit bigger, and it'll make all of your other creatures +2/+2 when you have both of those at the same time. All your other rogue creatures. So very solid. And it's also pretty cheap, for being that effect. I was super surprised that I was imagining it was going to be a little bit higher, but it did actually just get reprinted in Double Masters.
Yeah,
so I believe that probably put the cost down just a little bit more.
For sure. Speaking of cost, my next card is it's one of the more expensive cards in these lists that we've done. But this is my favorite non-elk making mythic rare from Throne of Eldraine. In Rankle, Master of Pranks. Absolutely love Rankle. I have not really had the opportunity to play Rankle in Commander. I've played it a lot in Standard. I've played it a bunch in Limited. But Rankle is built for Commander. 2 colorless, 2 black, 3/3, legendary creature, fairy rogue. Has flying and haste. Not 2 words you see very often, especially on a black creature.
Yeah.
And whenever Rankle deals combat damage to a player, you can choose any number of the following, which are each player discards a card, each player loses a life and draws a card, or each player sacrifices a creature. So, like I said, I haven't got the opportunity to play this in Commander necessarily, but it's built for it with each player, You can attack the certain person who doesn't happen to have the flyer available at the time, the block. That way you can get the trigger off of it and make everybody else discard a card, or make everybody else lose life and draw a card, or happen to get the one person's, flying creature out of play because you attack the person with a non-flyer. This card's great. It comes out of nowhere. Like, no one ever expects a hasting creature to begin with.
Not in a blue-black deck, for sure.
Not in a blue-black deck, for sure. So, Rankle, right up there. Bonus that it just happens to be a rogue and fits into the theme. So
yeah, honestly, it is kind of a bonus, because if you have your commander out, then it gets the extra bonus of milling the cards, getting the +1/+1, from that, and it's just super, like, being able to be like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna swing with this. I have Anowon already out, so I'm gonna swing with it. Each player's gonna discard a card. I'm gonna skip the lose 1 life and draw a card because I'm already gonna draw a card for hitting you with Anowon and like milling you for 4 and probably getting a creature out of that, and then each of you is gonna sacrifice a creature. Like,
yeah, exactly. I have a bunch of little 1/1 unblockable creatures with there's Changeling Outcast and Slither Blade and those kinds of creatures that are in this deck. You have a bunch of little rogues that you can throw to Rankle as needed.
Yeah, for sure. My next one, speaking of unblockable, this is another one which it may not necessarily need to be in the deck because there is already a bunch of unblockable, but it does give you the benefit of making your commander unblockable and making any of your really big creatures that don't happen to have unblockable, give them that, and that's Whisper Silk Cloak. And I think this is a pretty solid, like just below staple-ish card for commander. I think it can be added to a lot more decks than people generally put it in, but it's 3 mana, equipped creature can't be blocked and has Shroud, and it has equipped 2. Just very, very solid for anything that you've got that's just going to be like a really big, silly creature that can just bash in, can't be blocked, and it makes it so that it's super difficult to get rid of. You just put this on an Anowon, and it's also just super solid.
Yep. For sure. So my next card is from Zendikar Rising, and again, if you watched our previous upgrades video with the Land's Wrath deck, I talked about these modal dual face cards. Absolutely in love with them, and it was Glasspool Mimic. So this is a 2 colorless and a blue for a creature shapeshifter rogue. And Glasspool Mimic can enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature you control, except it's a shapeshifter rogue in addition to its other types. So 3 mana clone for your side of the table, And if you don't need the clone at the time, you can just play it as a land tapped that adds a blue in Glasspool Shore. These cards are just fantastic. They fit everything you need at any point. Keeping a land light hand, this allows you to play it as a land. Late game, you can just make a clone. Obviously, it can't clone your commander, because then you'll have 2 legendary creatures in play, but that's fine. It still can copy anything else. So
doesn't unfortunately have the
Sakashima clause.
Yeah, the Sakashima clause, or the not mirror. Is it mirror entity?
Yeah, mirror entity just tells you to ignore the legendary
ignores
rule.
The legendary rule, stuff like that, which allows you to get your commander, but it's not legendary, so things like that.
Yeah,
unfortunate, but it's still extremely good card. So.
Yep. If you have things, like Master Thief is in the deck. Stealing an artifact when it comes into play. If you copy it, you'll get to do that again. You have Whirler Rogue, which will create 2 Thopters. So there's Marsh Flitterer. So there's some come into play, enter the battlefield abilities that you'll be able to copy as well. Really solid card.
Very solid. My next card is just rotating out of standard, which I think is going to be really good if you're going to try and pick it up. Because it should, like most of the prices of rotating cards do drop a little bit because people start selling those off out of standard. And that is Command the Dreadhorde, which already is not really a super expensive card. It's only probably like 50 cents. It's a bulk rare, but you could probably pick it up off someone for, like quarter or less even. It's definitely going to be a very easy pickup as rotation goes through it. But it's a sorcery that says, choose any number of target creature and or planeswalker cards in graveyards. Command the Dreadhorde deals damage to you equal to the total converted mana cost of those cards. Put them onto the battlefield under your control. So since we're already milling stuff out, there's definitely already some regeneration or recursion for creature spells. But this one also lets you hit those planeswalkers if anybody happens to have any. And is just another solid, all right, I'm going to pick and choose the ones I want, put them onto the battlefield under my turn. My original intention was to put what was the Liliana's one that's just been reprinted in Jumpstart?
Like Rise of the Dark Realms?
Rise of the Dark Realms, yes. Which is absurdly good. Kind of an expensive card, yeah. It's definitely costs some money. So this is definitely a cheap option. It does make you lose the life. Only gets you the cards you want, but still very, very solid for, okay, I'm going to pick and choose. Okay, I want that 3 mana card, that 1 mana card, that, maybe 5 mana, whatever. And then, maybe grab some stuff that gains you life. Maybe grab some stuff that is going to give you a super big advantage later that you don't really care about losing 10 more life right now. So
they give you 40 life in this format. So why not use it, right?
Use it.
Exactly.
Use it all.
Exactly. So my next card is one of the more obnoxious cards from previous standard that is just is now gone, and I'm sure people are very excited that it's gone. Agent of Treachery from Core Set 20. 5 colors, blue, human rogue, of course, because rogue just seems to be tacked on everywhere. It's a 2/3, and when it enters the battlefield, you gain control of target permanent. Also just happens to have this extra little clause of, at the beginning of your end step, if you control 3 or more permanents you don't own, draw 3 cards. So you're not going to be blinking things in this deck, so you can't blink Agent of Treachery over and over and over again. But you are reanimating things. So if you're reanimating creatures that you don't own and you steal a card with Agent of Treachery, all of a sudden you could just have 3 creatures that aren't yours, or 3 permanents that aren't yours, and draw 3 cards. So, I love the Confiscate effect. I like reanimating Agent of Treachery. That sounds great. This card's just fantastic. I think it's underplayed in Commander, honestly.
For sure. It's definitely one of my favorites. That I've been meaning to get more copies of because it is super great. If I can combine that with, Thassa that lets you blink it, it just gets obnoxious, which was kind of the thing people were doing a little bit in standard for a while. But it's very, very solid. I love that card a lot, and it was very close to making my list as well. But my next one is another one that I know that our good friend Justin Parnell would absolutely hate because it has the term milling before milling, got keyworded, and that's Mindcrank. It's a 2 mana artifact. Whenever an opponent loses life, that player puts that many cards from the top of his or her library into her graveyard, which now is just keyworded to mill. Very solid in the deck that already wants to be putting a bunch of unblockable creatures or just swinging with a bunch of little creatures that can get in and deal that damage with Anowon. And It's like, all right, well, you're gonna mill with Anowon and then also mill with Mindcrank because you're losing that much, so you're just double milling for that. So
yeah, Mindcrank's only problem is that when you play it, the rest of the table looks at you like really hard. They're like, all right.
They immediately go,
they're
wait
like,
a minute.
Okay, no one's doing anything fair with Mindcrank almost ever. The card is very, very, very powerful. This deck, if you're just putting it into this precon the way it's built, it's still doing, good work, but it's more fair than anywhere else. But they may not know you're playing just an upgraded precon. If they see that Mindcrank turn 2, all of a sudden you're going to be the target. So.
Yep. Yeah, definitely a little bit later, maybe after you've gotten your Anowon out.
Yeah.
Play this, swing in with your Anowon at the person who can't block, and then, okay, well, now you're milling double. I'm going to be, drawing a card from that and all this. So it's solid, but definitely be aware of the stigma of Mindcrank being the target on you after that.
Yeah, sandbag that Mindcrank. Don't play it on turn 2.
Yeah,
put it in your saddlebags and just wait, because otherwise you're gonna be targeted. So I think I've gone through all of mine because we had a couple of similar ones, but I think you have one more.
Did have a couple of repeats there. My last one is one. It's an enchantment that I actually was pretty excited about. I put this into my speaking of the Rael deck that we did a little bit earlier for the last video. Teferi's Ageless Insight, which is a 2/2 legendary enchantment. If you would draw a card except for the first one you draw on each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. Really, really good in a Rael style deck where you're going to be discarding to draw a bunch of extra cards. And very solid in this deck with cards that are like Anowon the Ruin Sage, or that you're going to be able to draw those extra, just a little bit here and there. One of the things that for our takeout list was I was debating between Dimir Kirun and Dimir Locket, but being able to draw those 2 extra cards with Locket, if you had something like Teferi's Ageless Insight out, I think that elevates it way higher than being able to have another 2/2 unblockable creature. But
that's fair.
That was my last addition upgrade to the deck. So now we're going to go over a few of the cards that we think that we would take out. As I said, one of mine was the Dimir Kirun. Solid for, there's already a decent amount of artifact ramp in the deck, and like low artifact deck, it does have the Soul Ring, it does have the Arcane Signet, Commander Sphere, Dimir Signet, Dimir Locket, Dimir Key, they're all in there. So taking one out, probably not going to hurt the deck that much.
No, I think we both took a swamp out because of that, didn't we?
Yeah, and it does have 38 lands in the deck, which I definitely want to be able to hit a lot, like every one of my land drops. And it's not going to be, you're not going to be ramping very often in this deck as opposed to like the Land's Wrath deck. But I think you're going to be able to be okay if you have 37 lands and the amount of artifact ramp that you already have in the deck.
Yeah, it has like seven artifact ramps between, its signets, its locket, Mind Stone, Soul Ring, Arcane Signal. Yeah, it has a decent amount for.
That's another really good thing about the deck, and we talked about how great the value is both of them actually have Arcane Signet in it, which is just a solid card that was printed once, and then they reprinted it in the Commander deck, and they reprinted in this Commander deck. Super happy that they're reprinting this all over the place. It's a very solid card.
Yeah, I actually, when this deck was spoiled, I was like, oh, this one doesn't have anywhere near as much value as the Land's Wrath deck, and then I started looking at it, and I was like, oh, all of these cards have only been printed like once.
Mm-hmm.
Like these cards are from older sets that don't really get reprinted very often, and this deck actually has substantially more value if you looked at just base retail prices prior to them coming out. It was like almost $15-$20 more than the Land's Wrath deck. So
yeah, it's got a few of those Morning Tide cards that have only been printed once, and even the like commons and uncommons are a little bit more expensive than your average common and uncommon, and just a few other cards that have only been printed once. Like Notorious Throng was a rare that's really only ever been printed once, and it's very solid card. So things like that.
So other cards that we took out, we both agreed on Stolen Identity. 6 mana making a clone token is pretty nice. I personally didn't want this card because of just in the last video I mentioned I didn't like Bolster. Cypher I really do like, but they disappointed me so much by not giving me enough of it. I'm not. These creatures are unblockable, but they're all very fragile. So I don't want to base my expectations on being able to cipher this 6 mana spell over and over again. So
a lot of like 1/1, 1/2 unblockables, stuff like
now,
that.
Obviously, if you happen to hit your invisible stalker, that'll help. But your little ones like what we're talking about, Changing Outcast and Slither Blade and all these creatures, they die very, very easy. So
yeah, and I know that like we were both talking about the amount of unblockable creatures that are in the deck, and especially the little ones. And we both agreed they probably need to be like one shaved. I said that the Changeling Outcast, I think like the 1-drop Changeling is probably fine to leave out. I know that you picked Invisible Stalker out. Yeah.
Yeah, I get the hexproof aspect of it, which is nice. But overall, my objective is to just try and get low to the ground, get these unblockable guys out there, and get my commander out there, and kind of just generate value from there. So that was what I took out. Yep. We both chose Heirloom Blade. It looks like.
Yep.
Not the best card.
Yeah, it's just another enchantment or art equipment rather. And I mean, giving it +3/+1 is nice for your unblockable stuff. But the rest of the text is just kind of
it's gonna replace it. Yeah. Like, all right, my 1 or 2 drops gonna get replaced to another somewhat, not mediocre, because they're all themed cards. That's the key here. But for the most part, you have a bunch of smaller little things, so you're not like upgrading substantially every time it dies. So
yeah, for sure. I took out the Price of Fame from the deck, which I think that there are other like pretty solid removal spells that can be at common and uncommon. And there's already a murder in the deck. I think you could very easily find other ones. Price of Fame is one that I like. Because it does have the reduction if you're targeting a legendary creature, but I think that there's probably better options that have more flexibility that you can look for.
Sure.
And so just having that kind of like uncommon targeted removal is okay. You could probably upgrade it to something better.
Looks like we both chose Fairy Vandal as another one. There's a lot of these 1 and 2 and 3 drop creatures they're all fairly similar. They all do pretty much the same thing for the most part. This deck can't really take advantage too easily of the drawing 2 cards on your opponent's turn with Fairy Vandal. It can definitely do it on its own turn, obviously. But there's not a bunch of little instants to kind of to benefit that on their turn as well. So it's just a fine card. I chose Night Veil Sprite as another one. Night Veil Sprite is a little bit better, I think, than Fairy Vandal in this deck, just because of the surveil ability to be able to put something big into your graveyard or just clear the way if you don't want it. But again, there's just so many of those creatures in there, so.
Yeah, for sure. My next one was Open into Wonder, which is another one where I've seen it and I like the idea of it, but I always just kind of think there's probably something I could be playing over it. It's definitely not like you need to play the most optimal kind of thing. It's a solid card. It's just it always looks better than it is to me.
Yep.
And we talked a little bit about that in the last episode as well. And it's just X target creatures can't be blocked this turn. You've already kind of got that on a lot of your creatures, and whenever they deal damage, draw a card. And it's like, you already got like a decent amount of card draw in the deck, so having a sorcery that makes you most likely tap a lot of your mana, if not all of it, you could probably be doing a little bit more with that mana. So
yeah, there's just if you want more draw that's not tied to dealing combat damage or something, there's just so many different options.
Exactly.
That's not you're not really making a ton of things unblockable to begin with. It's a nice kind of like gotcha card, which is sweet if you can finish someone off with it, but
yeah.
Plenty of other options there. Let's see. Just another one of... so I chose to take out Ogre Slumlord. I think you can definitely keep it there. It's a fine card. It doesn't really fit what I want to do with this deck, which is just kind of, get to it quickly and use my commander as an advantage with a Lord. It's nice, they have Death Touch. You make 1/1 rats. It's fine if they happen to kill your other stuff, but... It's just a 3/3 for 5, and I don't know. I'm not about it. I'm not for it. Although I do like rat tokens. So there's that.
Yeah, for sure. My last one that I have, and I think you have 1 or 2 more after that.
Yeah.
My last one is the Enigma Thief, and it seems kind of bad saying that you're going to take out one of the 3 new cards in the deck, but this is the only one out of like all of the cards that I'm really like... It's okay, not great. Like, it's a 7 mana 5/5 flyer, 5 blue. When it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, return up to one target non-land permanent card or non-land permanent that player controls to its owner's hand. It does have Prowl for 3 and a blue, which, if you can get it for its Prowl cost, it's fantastic. A 5/5 flyer for 4 that bounces a non-land permanent to each opponent's hand is super, super good. If you're having to pay 7 for this, not as good. I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. I kept it in the deck because the upside is real high if you get to Prowl that card. But yeah, the 7 mana rate, not great.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So you had a couple more here?
Yeah, we'll just go over real quick. The last card I want to look at real quick is a new card that they actually did put in the deck. Merfolk Windrobber. 1 blue, 1/1 flyer. When it deals combat damage to a player, they mill a card. It's a Merfolk Rogue, of course. And then you could sacrifice it to draw a card, but only if your opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. Just another one of those generic, 1-drop, 2-drop. They all do the same thing. This one's not unblockable. It just has flying. So that wasn't even a consideration for keeping. The ability of sacrificing it to draw a card, sure. I guess that's cute if they're going to remove it or if they're going to wrath the board or something, but this card doesn't do enough for me, and there's plenty of other options. And I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's everything.
Okay. So you've heard us talk about a few cards that we would each add into the deck and a few cards that we would remove from the deck. Make sure to let us know what cards you would add to the deck and what you would remove from the deck in the comments below. Also, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. For Jonathan Suarez, I'm Jeremy Knoll. Thanks for watching. We're going to talk about the Sneak Attack deck from Zendikar Rising. Did I start talking in my excited voice? Are we going to start again now?